Silvio Dante is the loyal and ever-dependable consigliere on The Sopranos. Played by Steven Van Zandt, the character's signature look and mannerisms made him one of the most recognizable symbols of the show. In fact, the Silvio persona is so iconic, it would even be used in another show to capitalize off The Sopranos' success, that show being Lilyhammer. Lilyhammer is a comedy drama series about a mobster named Frankie the Fixer, who goes into witness protection in the remote town of Lilyhammer in Norway. Running for 3 seasons, the show had the distinction of being the first Netflix original, though we'll look at what that actually means later on. The show is fun, with a lot of homages to The Sopranos, and also features a number of actors from that series, including of course Steven Van Zandt as the main character Frankie. But some people think that the connection to The Sopranos goes deeper than references. Some people believe that the entire show is a dream, happening while the character Silvio Dante is in a coma at the end of The Sopranos.
Always with the scenarios.
Alright, a little recap for those who somehow don't know who Silvio is. Silvio is the consigliere, or advisor to Tony Soprano, the boss of the DeMeo family. Silvio is typically a step away from the street-level crimes of his compatriots, instead focusing on running the Bada Bing strip club that acts as one of the headquarters for their criminal operation. Though Silvio typically remains in the background of most episodes, there are a few times we really get to see his personality shine. We learn that the normally calm and level-headed man is easily upset when he loses at gambling.
Leave the fucking cheese there, alright? I love fucking cheese at my feet. I stick motherfucking provolone in my socks at night so they smell like your sister's crotch in the morning.
We also learn that he's particularly proud of his Italian heritage. In the episode Christopher, he uncharacteristically leads a charge to defend Christopher Columbus Day from Native American activists.
I'll tell you what it is. It's anti-Italian discrimination. Columbus Day is a day of Italian pride. It's our holiday, and they want to take it away.
However, the most iconic and endearing trait of Silvio is his habit of quoting The Godfather.
Just when they thought I was out, they pull me back in.
In fact, his impersonation is so iconic, more people attribute the line to him rather than Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. The impersonation was even used in a World of Warcraft commercial back in the day.
World of Warcraft. Try it free at warcraft.com.
Rated T for Teen.
What's your game?
In the penultimate episode of The Sopranos, The Blue Comet, Silvio is shot by the Lubertazzi family as part of the ongoing war with The Sopranos. Though he survives, he's left in a coma, and it's unlikely that he'll ever wake up.
Called the hospital. They wouldn't give no info on Sil.
Ged's brother finally phoned back. Doctors don't think he'll recover consciousness.
The loss of Silvio is one of the most devastating things the family goes through. All throughout the show, Silvio has constantly supported Tony. He's the only one who's really willing to give Tony the real advice that he needs, and not just what he wants to hear. This is because they've known each other since they were very young, and were part of a crew together in their early days.
When we was kids, we had our own little crew. Me, your dad, Bonanino, Tony, Silvio, Dante.
When Tony becomes the boss of the DeMeo family, he makes Silvio his consigliere and number 2 guy. When Tony is shot and left in his own coma, Silvio takes over as acting boss of the family. Though the stress of the job ultimately proves too much for Silvio, he's still shown completely loyal to Tony, never thinking of stealing power for himself, unlike others such as Vito and Paulie. So the loss of Silvio is a real blow to the family, and part of the overall bleak tone we see in the final episode. Alright, so what exactly does this have to do with Lilyhammer? Well, Lilyhammer tells the story of Frank the Fixer Tagliano. After being set up for a hit by his boss, he becomes an informant and enters the witness protection program. He has to be sent to Lilyhammer in Norway, both because no one will search for him there, and also because he likes the country. He then proceeds to get into various conflicts as he builds a new semi-criminal enterprise in his new country. The theory goes that this show in its entirety is Silvio's dream while he's in his coma. After all, when Tony was in his own coma, he also had a dream in which he was living an alternate life as a salesman. To go along with this idea, when Tony is in a coma, Silvio comes in and holds his hand, and when Silvio is in his coma, Tony does the same, drawing a parallel between both experiences. And finally, for what it's worth, Silvio also has this line in the show.
What, do you speak Norwegian? For now.
However, there are a number of problems with this theory. For example, in Tony's coma dream, he's still named Tony Soprano.
Good morning. Anthony Soprano.
Yep. See some photo ID, please.
It's a misconception that Tony is Kevin Finnerty in his dream. Kevin may represent a different part of Tony's subconscious, but his main consciousness is still called Tony, and tied to Tony's experiences. So why would Silvio have a completely different identity as Frank Tagliano? It's not only a case of a name, he has a completely different backstory. He's not even from New Jersey, he's part of the New York families. Even if we say it's a dream and dreams can be weird, you'd think that the dream would be rooted in some way to his actual identity and experiences. Now, I've read some explanations like this one from Lock VSP on Reddit that try to explain how the dream is a representation of Silvio's subconscious, but these always strike me as reaching. It's the same thing as people believing that Walt died in Breaking Bad and the final episode was just his dying fantasy. Or, I guess more accurately, it's like the Malcolm in the Middle theory.
And then there was me, and I had a shaved head, and a goatee, and I wore a black hat. And the only thing that made sense in the whole dream is I still walked around in my underwear.
Now, of course, there's another reason why we can discount any evidence from The Sopranos. The Sopranos was in no way setting up a sequel to come out 5 years later from a Norwegian studio.
Conspiracy theories now.
Rather, the idea is that Lilyhammer builds on from the already existing Sopranos material and works it into their premise. So instead, let's take a look at Lilyhammer and see what evidence exists for this theory. Well, the main thing is the fact that the main character both looks like and acts like Silvio Dante. They share many similar mannerisms and traits, and Frankie is portrayed as a mostly honorable person, just like Silvio. But this is of course simply due to the fact that they're both played by Steven Van Zandt. Little Steven was not an actor before The Sopranos. David Chase decided to cast him simply because of his appearance and the fact that Chase was a big fan of Bruce Springsteen. Van Zandt played in Springsteen's E Street Band. He was originally considered for the role of Tony Soprano, but he wanted it to go to a real actor. So instead, the role of Silvio was created specifically for him. There's actually a line of dialogue in The Sopranos that I think is a reference to this.
Back when Jackie was at the end, we floated the idea of me stepping up to the big seat. Not Tony, me.
So the fact that Steven does a similar performance in both roles can just be attributed to the fact that he isn't a classically trained actor. Also, Lilyhammer really relies on The Sopranos' fame to draw in its audience, so having Steven do a Silvio affect makes sense from a marketing perspective. However, the biggest hint that the show is a dream is this. In the third season, Frankie is shot. He winds up in the hospital, and while he's there, another patient who is not lucid delivers this line.
I sure hope this is a dream.
It's all a dream, Silvio. It's all a dream.
Well, that confirms it, right? It's just like when Tony heard Meadows' voice in his dream. It's Silvio's subconscious, or maybe his wife Gabriella, telling him that he's dreaming. But there's a problem with this. See, in the season 2 finale, Frankie goes back to New York. We then get this line from his ex, played by Maureen Van Zandt, who is his wife in real life and who also played Silvio's wife Gabriella.
The return of Frankie the Fixer. This is like a Sopranos episode.
Yep, they reference that The Sopranos is a show in this world. So unless Silvio is also dreaming that his New Jersey life was made into a reality TV show or something, then we have to accept that the Sopranos references are just references. The show is paying homage to its iconic predecessor, while not trying to be a secret sequel or something like that. Now, full disclosure, I haven't actually seen all of Lilyhammer. I compiled this evidence mostly from YouTube clips and Reddit, so there may be other little hints or things in the show that I'm not aware of.
I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart.
I was planning on watching the show eventually, once I finish the others I need to get through first. But there's a problem. Netflix is actually taking the show down from their platform, as Little Steven sadly tweeted out. Now, you might be saying, I thought this was a Netflix original. Why is Netflix taking down its own show? Well, you see, just because a show is billed as a Netflix original, doesn't mean that Netflix actually made it. The show is actually made by NKR1, which is Norway's largest broadcast company. Netflix had exclusive North American distribution rights, which is why they billed it as their own show. However, probably due to contract reasons, the show will be pulled from Netflix. That's the reason why I made this video. I'm sad that a show with even a peripheral connection to The Sopranos is being taken down, and I'm also sad I didn't get to watch it in its entirety. There just wasn't enough time, Michael. There just wasn't enough time. It's also devastating to people like Little Steven, who poured their heart and soul into the show. Steven served as an executive producer on the show, and actually composed most of the soundtrack himself from his own studio. So even though this is another one of those classic Kino videos, where I take 15 minutes to discuss what ultimately amounts to a simple no, I wanted to draw some attention to this show.
Let's say it then. Walt fucking Whitman over here.
No idea where it will land or if it will be made available to the public on some other platform, but if you got some time, try and give it a watch before it goes. And remember, our true enemy has yet to reveal himself. You fucking skiffooza! Where'd he get this video? The Video Museum? Obsc Racing Media, Daz J Kid, Sam Cedarland, Celery Man, Jenna Marie Johnson, Brad Smith Studios, Uncle Mike, Shane Boyce, and Matt Joyce.